Hiya, I'm a bit of a pacifist, and I would like it if there was just no more war, just like, at all. But wars happen for so many different reasons, whether they be political, economic, religious, historical, or whatever, that to stop all wars is a massive problem. Nuclear weapons, however, I think are a bit different though, because although they obviously have an impact on war and diplomatic relations around the world, they are supposedly never meant to be used. The argument is that they prevent war. So let's talk about that. There are currently three distinct possibilities. If you have a situation where two countries have a war, where neither has nuclear weapons, they may well have a war, which is bad, but obviously nuclear weapons don't come into it. If you have a situation where two countries have a war, and one of the countries has nuclear weapons but the other doesn't, then nuclear weapons don't come into it either. This may seem odd at first, but think about it. If a country with nuclear weapons used them against a country without them, it would be wholly immoral, and the rest of the world would brand them as war criminals, so nuclear weapons don't come into it there either. So really, nuclear weapons are only relevant in warfare to stop countries with nuclear weapons from fighting each other. I suppose one could argue that if nuclear weapons keep peace in the world between the major power, then what's the harm? But this is my concern. As long as we have nuclear weapons, other people like Kim Jong-un or terrorist groups will see them as a way to get power and will therefore want them as well. And the more people who have them, the more likely it is something will go wrong. I don't trust our own leaders very much, but I don't think they're going to go and start a nuclear war anytime soon. But some crazy despot who believes themselves to be better than everyone else, and also who probably has a bunker in which they could hide away for the rest of their life, could well be more of a risk. Now at the moment, only 9 countries currently have nuclear weapons. The big superpowers, Russia, the USA and China, the major European powers who emerged as winners of the Second World War, Britain and France, India and Pakistan have them, but generally are only concerned with each other, and then also Israel, though they refuse to confirm or deny, and North Korea have some capacity to create a nuclear bomb, though as yet not an intercontinental ballistic missile. So that's 9 countries that have them, and all the other countries don't. And we can be fairly certain of that because due to the nature and size of nuclear weapons, when countries develop them, neighbouring countries can tell. Let's talk about how big they are. When the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima in 1945, it killed an estimated 140,000 people. Today the nuclear weapons owned by the UK are up to around 40 times more destructive. This means if a modern day nuclear bomb was dropped on a major city like New York or London, the death toll could be upwards of 2 million. Since we live in a relatively small country, it would only take a handful of the thousands of nuclear weapons that exist in the world to completely destroy us, which means none of the other nuclear powers are really intimidated by our nuclear threat, since their nuclear arsenal severely dwarfs our own, and our country would be easy to take out in a nuclear strike. All we could do would be to strike back in anger from one of our Trident submarines, knowing that since we were all dead anyway, we could take out a handful of cities worth of people with us. And let's say the worst happened, and there was a war between the USA and Russia. It would make sense for either country to try and incapacitate the other's ability to fire their missiles, right? And where does the USA have a bunch of missiles stationed ready to go? Down our east coast. So wouldn't that make a sensible first strike choice for Russia? So, we have nuclear weapons that we should never use. Us having them makes other people want them too. Us having them makes us a target. They mean we have no right to tell other people not to have them. We can't really use them on anyone because either they don't have them and it would be a war crime, or they have a lot more than us. And also they just generally damage international relations. And then one thing I haven't even touched on yet, they cost so much money. Britain has a fleet of 4 submarines that act as our nuclear capacity. They are stored in Fasney, Scotland, and there is always one stationed on patrol somewhere. This fleet and the missiles stored on board have a lifetime cost of well over 200 billion. Annual in-service costs and other related expenses are estimated at around 3 billion per year. That's about 6% of all military spending. To put that into context, for £200 billion, you could employ 60,000 nurses and 60,000 teachers, each on £40,000 a year for 40 years, and still have some money left over. I mean, 6% of all military spending for something that kind of has no use. I think that's the real truth of why they're made. The people that make nuclear weapons make a hell of a lot of money out of making them and selling them to us. Arms dealers are growing incredibly rich off the back of our government spending money on something that, if anything, just makes the world very opposite of what it was supposed to achieve. If you cared about the world not being a dangerous place, you would spend the money a bit better. Like, to deal with Bin Laden or a terrorist group, you have highly trained special forces that go in and deal with the threat. You don't drop a nuclear bomb that also kills 500,000 other people as collateral. Now, I can understand when people say that the problem with all of this is that nuclear weapons already exist, and there's no changing that, and as long as other people have them, then we need them as well. I do kind of get that. Here's my response. I don't think, for the reasons I already mentioned, that if we, the UK, got rid of our nuclear arsenal, it would really change the world that much. The USA, China and Russia would still be the dominant superpowers in the world. However, it would improve our international standings in terms of diplomacy, and would give us a lot more sway when it comes to telling other nations not to develop them. We could then encourage France not to have them either, and we could have a nuclear weapon-free Europe, which still wouldn't change the world that much, but would be a nice thing, and we would be moving the world in the right direction. Then we could approach India and Pakistan and ask them to do the world's first ever multilateral total disarmament. This would mean that both countries slowly and steadily, over a number of years, decommission their nuclear sites, while weapons inspectors from the UN or some international body can keep going in and checking it's all above board. Then, once that has been achieved with India and Pakistan, the world can start to look at Russia, China and the United States doing the same thing. And at that time, I would hope Israel will follow suit with the US and North Korea with China. At no point would you want a situation with only one country having a nuclear capacity. That would be crazy. And the whole process from start to finish, I imagine, would take a long time to achieve, maybe even 100 years. But at least at the end of it, it would be done and the world would be a safer place. And here's the thing, it needs to take that long. Because if, say, tomorrow, every government with a nuclear arsenal said they got rid of them, I wouldn't believe them. Maybe I'm too cynical, but I wouldn't. But I would hope that in a few hundred years' time, after this process has happened, in the same way that when we look back on people from a few hundred years ago and say, isn't it crazy that people thought slavery was acceptable? They'll look back on us and say, isn't it crazy that they used to have weapons that could literally kill everything on the planet? That's the change we need. We need to start building a world fit for the future. And like I said at the beginning, it won't stop all war, but it will be a damn good step in the right direction.